Thank you so much, Renee. Thank you, everyone. My name is Maya. I'm a recovering adult child. Good evening, good afternoon. I'm just looking at my clock to make sure I know my time and doing a little bit of mental math. Thanks for your patience. Great. I I'm coming in with some acute grief, and I'm really grateful that I have a program that lets me be with that and lets me show up, lets me know what parts of me, what ages of me are in that grief, and gives me a tool to sit with them. Um, and be present so that both can be true. I can be in active grief and I can be here in my aligned and recovering adult self, sharing tools and experience strength and hope with you all. This program has done that for me. I've been in 12-step programs. It'll be 10 years in 2 weeks. And moving through from my own physical substance recovery to process-based addiction to the core of it for me, which is my own growing up experience and all of those parts and ages that need tending, has been a journey that has revolutionized my life. I'll share with you a little bit about what happened and what it was like and what it's like now, drawing on those, traditions that held me at my core and that some of them still continue to serve and some of them I have enough grounding in myself to say, oh, okay, no, thank you anymore, which is it's just amazing. So, I'm calling in from Maine, USA. I've lived here most of my life in rural Maine. My mom is my primary qualifier for this program. She is an alcoholic, and for most of my life, she has been physically abstinent from alcohol. And from 13 on, she started looking at emotional sobriety. Uh, my 13-year-old self was her emotional bottom that got her into program. Um, and I'm with that younger person and giving them a lot of love. So for me, I always knew that my mom was an alcoholic because she would tell me, um, but I could never see a bottle because she wasn't drinking. What my mom did instead was get drunk and high on her internal emotional experience. So I couldn't see the external marker of this is going to be a problem, this is going to be really dangerous. So I learned how to tune my nervous system like a bat to be able to feel those subtle shifts in the room, in my parent, to be able to say, oh, okay, now we're headed toward like peak intoxication. And peak intoxication for my mom looked like massive fear or rage that would land in me anywhere from verbal and emotional abuse to physical abuse that peaked when I was 12 or 13. Um, my mom was an orphan. My grandmother was an orphan. Nobody's parents died. My great grandmother took her children, my grandmother, and said, I don't want to do this anymore, and put them in the orphanage. And my grandmother learned that that was a valid strategy and took my mother and my mother's siblings and put them in the same orphanage. So I have a lineage of abandonment, and I have a lot of epigenetic orphans that just cry inside me all the time. And I carry them around and I say, I'm here for you and I love you and I'm not going anywhere. Um, I learned pretty young to be able to understand my mother's trauma as a reason she was causing trauma in me. So I learned massive empathy for my own harm. And that moved forward in my adult life in landing me in an abusive marriage where I could understand perfectly why somebody may hurt me the way that they did. Um, so in ACA, I'm gonna swear, in ACA, particularly where I am right now, hanging out with my inner teenager, I've been like in the liberatory medicine of fuck off. It's been really pretty incredible to learn how to say no and to learn how to set boundaries. That's brand new for me. And so I'm like hanging out with my teen recently. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna hang out with you. We're gonna talk, but also like we need to kind of keep it in a box. And that's that's been a new challenge. Um, so as a child, I learned how to detect danger emotionally. I learned how to become my mother's parent in order to help her not hurt me. Sometimes this was an explicit transaction between us. My mom would come to me as a little ACA herself, as an orphan, and say, I don't want to hit you anymore and I can't stop. Um, so would you charge me $5 every time I hit you? And so it was like a swear jar, but for my mom, and it was hitting me. And so I remember clear as I was probably 13 years old. I was running as fast as I could up the stairs, which is very hard to do. I had a big, angry parent behind me who caught my leg, and I don't remember kind of where she hit me, but I remember being perfectly composed. And I turned around and I put out my hand and I said, "You owe me $5." And that was the strategy of protection that I took into all of my adult relationships. I, of course, am wired to fall in love with addicts. Um, I'm also queer, so I fall in love with addict women. So I just, find my mom over and over and over again. And it is so subconscious and it is so amazing that it's like kind of like a party trick. Like I can tell you who in the room is an alcoholic because it's who I'm like, wow, that person is hot. I'm like super into them. And then, you get talking to them over the course of the night and you're like, did it again, and before this program, I felt fundamentally powerless over that. I've worked steps in two other programs. I've never looked at powerlessness the way that I have had to look at it in this program. To be like, oh yeah, I mean, powerless over drinking. I mean, yeah, I get that, like, eh, like I can put it, yeah, I'll put it down. I'll say I'm powerless. Yes, totally. I made some really questionable choices. Sure, let's go through this. Powerlessness in sex and love addiction, in choosing violent people. Um, that was some real powerlessness. But it didn't get to the core of it, which is this, which is the why, which is, I was completely powerless over the conditioning I was given as a child. You can't. Yeah, I heard a really incredible, I forget who it was, but they were talking about fight, flight, freeze, and they were talking about developmental trauma and how strategies of safety. I'm going to fight it, I'm going to run away from it, or I'm just going to go numb and accept that death is coming, which is our embodied experience of freeze response. Um, when you are a child and you are living in a dangerous environment, fight or flight are not actually valid survival strategies because that's where we need to get our food. That's where we need to get our shelter. It actually puts us in more danger to make those two choices. So often, our bodies are wired toward freeze quickly. Uh, sorry, I was up until 3 in the morning at a board meeting, which I'll get into later. So I'm quite tired, and I appreciate your patience. But I was talking about nervous systems. Thanks for being with me. Um, the powerless overness over my nervous system response, the powerlessness over what I developmentally choose to do for my own safety strategies, the powerlessness over this false parent that I developed as a child to parent my mother into not harming me. I took into every relationship, every job, every experience of power that I have ever had. It was the minute I start seeing that you are not safe for me, I'm going to get bigger, smarter, safer. I'm going to know what you're about to do because I've got that incredible bat sense. I'm going to know if you're close to relapse because, hey, dated addicts, right? I'm going to try and help you to not hurt me. And I watched that pattern play out over and over in my partnerships. And I have so much grief that I'm a body worker. I know a lot about trauma. Um, I know statistics around growing up with complex PTSD, around growing up in dysfunctional homes, and how that sets me up as an adult to have a harder time in intimate partnership. I'm 40 years old this year, and I just watched my last partnership dissolve for exactly the same reasons as every other one, which was I chose the fulfillment of my own abandonment cycle again. Um, that is a lot of grief to sit with. To say I am so without this program, I am powerless to change my fundamental story inside of myself that I replay over and over and over again. I worked the steps in the yellow book with two fellow travelers. Those steps changed my life, changed my approach. Um, in miraculous ways, like in AA, they're like stay for the miracle. It took me two other programs to find the miracle, but it's here. And it really like I'm watching myself make different choices. I'm watching myself value myself differently. I'm watching myself have language for who inside me is making the choice, who inside me is responding and reacting to meet what I thought was this like regulated protection strategy of like, I know what's happening. I'm smarter than this. Let me help you, get sober, like whatever that is. To be like, that person is actually a child and they're really scared and they don't know how to do it. My regulated adult self would make a totally different choice. And it would be to say, like, that's you. Make the choices you're going to make in your life. I'm not going to be a part of them. Um, which is what I was able to say to my last partner at the end of our last relationship, and my last relationship as the result of working this program. For me, intimate relationship and this program just weave together because that's where we practice. That's where I practice my most fundamental wiring. It's where I see my triggers close enough because it's where I get scared enough um, to see my fundamental protection strategies coming out. Um, how I respond when I'm scared is a really great indicator for, where I am in my program. Because all of those traits in the laundry list, are what I'm doing to try to keep myself safe. Those traits aren't activated if I'm not feeling scared. So it's been really helpful for me to start to understand how often I feel scared. Um, and how often my younger parts are running the show. And getting language for how to support them, how to stay present, how to stay in my adult self and be that solution for those people, those children inside me whose responses when they were children would have been totally appropriate. But I'm not. I'm not 13 and I'm not 15 and I'm not 18 and I'm not any of these ages. I'm not one. Um, I'm not any of these ages of these memories that live inside me that are so frozen that they don't know that I'm an adult. Working this program gives me access to those subconscious parts that are sitting there in that room as an adult being like, that person's for me, you know? And so I'm in Inner Loving Parent Guidebook now. That's a whole other animal. I know probably everybody says it. It's super different. It's hard. It's amazing. Um, I've had a lot of language for my inner child for a long time. I haven't had a lot of language for my inner teen. And it has been shocking to me, revelatory to me, how much of my stuff is inner teen. I remember coming into this program and like, for those of you who have done substance-based programs, there's kind of like, how you give a good share, right? And it's like this, and it's like this, and it's like this, and it's stay for the miracle. Bam, I did it. I did a great job. Yes, nailed authenticity in a format, right? When I came into this program, there was nothing telling me what it was to be good. There was nothing telling me what it was to be successful, to give a good share, to like hit all the marks, which is how I knew that I was safe, was I hit all the marks. Coming into this program, I was so disoriented because this room asks me a good share. There's no good here. There's just authentic. And that's what I didn't know how to do. That's been a real challenge. I came into this room, I I found ACA and started working steps in earnest. I found ACA a few years ago. I had had a book, Adult Children of Alcoholics, since I was like 19, and I kept it and it was like my dirty little secret, that I was looking at the fact that maybe my mom was an alcoholic and maybe I had some stuff. I never looked at it, I never worked it. I wanted to go to meetings. Um, in person pre-COVID, and there was like two, and they were totally inaccessible to me. So having Zoom meetings opened up this program for me, opened up a diversity of recovery for me that I have not had in rural Maine. It's been incredible. But I would come into this program, and at 8 years sober at the time, I would just dissociate because it was so close to the wound and it was so close to what I didn't know how to do. At so many years, just waltzing into an AA room, I went into an AA room in the Bahamas and somebody was like, "Hey, want a chair?" And I was like, "Yep." Because you know the format, you know how to be good, you know how to get it. I came into this room and I would just sit here spinning from what you all were saying. And it took me a long time to start to get my feet under me, uh my feet, right? Because you asked me to be me. um, and that was new. I started working steps last summer, um and started seeing my responses change. My patterned, as old as I am, core responses. I saw it change with my partner. I saw it change with my job. I saw it change in my family of origin. Um, Thanks for bearing with me. I'm so tired. Um, Starting to inventory myself in a totally different way, breaking those rules of don't talk and don't trust and don't feel. Starting to look at how to talk about what was really moving and starting to do that first within myself, because the layers of that are reinforced inside me before I even open my mouth to share, in a meeting or on the page, it required coming through layers and layers of dissociation that were so old that those three rules were internalized in my nervous system. Right? Like, you don't have access to this, you can't feel this, dissociate. um And I'm sitting here and I'm so sad. um, because I can feel that now. I'll tell you, so I'm transgender. I've been out since I was 17 years old. I'm 40 now, so the majority of my life. My high school was a very dangerous place for me. I was the only out person in my high school. My community was a dangerous community for me. I was very isolated. It was uh the amount of kind of God-based conversion therapy rhetoric that I experienced was really intense, which is really pretty great that I like love talking about higher power and love talking about God, and I was able to like preserve that in myself. But I graduated early from high school because it was a physically violent place. I did double coursework in order to get out, um, which meant I was just really much more alone than my peers. I got a lot of really hard messaging about being fundamentally broken, sick, wrong, all the things that we learn in our dysfunctional families as well, just compounded with a layer of queerness. So my high school, which is still categorized as like one of the most dangerous in Maine, they were getting ready to repeal a protection policy for trans and gender expansive students. Um, and we all showed up. I have been doing this most of my life. I educate on queer and trans rights professionally. I have taught schools how to be safer at the state level. I have taught at the National Association for Suicidality on queer and trans rights. I am used to this. I went into a building in my school district and I was just a high schooler. I was in so much grief. And I watched people with these incredibly articulate stories sharing, high schoolers, brilliant, with their prepared speeches and their incredible points, and they were just amazing. And I went in there, and it was the first time, like my adult self, who is talking to you right now, as soon as I got up to the mic, was just in the back seat. And I just said, I looked at the school board and I said, I didn't prepare anything. I just want to tell you what it was like before these protections were in place. And I spoke from myself, and I didn't give a good share, and I didn't nail it. I just talked about how it hurt. Um, I'm like gonna cry, like being with that. And I went and I sat back down and I felt so many layers of shame around like, where was the point you made? Like where were, the talking points around advocacy? Like, what did you just do? And I really got to see how my inner teen has so much wounding that it was just this like unalchemized, unprocessed, like I just need you in this town who held so much of my pain just to hear me. And I'm trying to have compassion for my inner teen who just needed to be heard in that room. The school board just voted to repeal that protection policy. So I feel really sad for queer and trans kids in that high school right now who are probably experiencing what I experienced 20 years ago. They saw a huge upswing in bullying after the last vote to repeal it, and it's sad. And had I gone into that meeting pre-ACA, I would have come out as numb to this as I went in. Um, 10 years ago, I would have drank about it. I've found, layers and layers of just not feeling around these core woundings. And today I woke up and I'm just devastated. Um, and that feels really good. Um, it feels really good to be so in touch with that part of me that drives so much of my shame and so much of my grief and so much of the pattern I have of choosing people who enforce for me that I'm not lovable. Um, I had no idea. I was so disconnected from my inner teen. Because my inner child, was just this like super cute little girl who was hurt a lot. And it's really easy to love that person. My inner teen was like a riotous little dyke who I love. Um, and that person has been so locked up in me and running so much of the show and so many of my adult choices that have been unmanageable or grief filled or just enforcing that I'm not lovable. Um, I've done EMDR, I've done therapy. I am like an out professional queer educator. I teach Yoga Nidra, which is a meditation for like releasing limiting held beliefs. I've never touched this the way this program lets me touch this. Um, and having language for what's moving in me has been so profound. Yeah, I mean, a month ago, I don't know that because we just hit inner teen chapter in Inner Loving Parent, right? So it's like, woof, just like blew the lid off of it. Um, a month ago, I don't know that I would have known this. I would have come out of yesterday just shaken and knowing that I'm not okay, um, without knowing who was grieving and who was reacting and who was responding and how to care for them. Um, and how valid their pain is. So I don't know what I'm going to do after this meeting, but I know that I am going to take care of that person. I'm going to listen to them. I'm going to ask them what they need. I'm going to tell them they're not alone. We'll probably listen to, some music that I listened to at that age, but also, oh my God, the queer music that's happening right now is just like revolutionary. Like I've been like my inner teen has been listening to the radio being like, they could say that on the radio now. Like it's just really amazing. I'm like, yeah, dude. Like it's getting better. Um, I I think that's most of what I want to share. I am in the mystery of this program. Uh, this is a broad path with room for all parts. It took a long time for me to learn how to walk it um, because it is so deep and it is so personal and it is locked inside in various parts of me. Um, and fellow travelers. I have a sponsor in AA who she she's like me in AA. She's like a somatic experiencing practitioner witch, so like she's got the language for this program and like thank goodness for her. I have incredible support. Um, I have support from my parents in a way that I never would have had prior to working this program. I'm able to show up as my authentic self and be met by the parts of them that can meet me and let the rest go, which is really amazing. I'm going to go camping with my parents and my brother and my nephews and my niece in 2 weeks without a partner. I used to always have to bring somebody with me to be my buffer, like, and my like emotional support person, to hold me. Um, it is unthinkable to me to be in nature like without an out with my biological family. But I genuinely enjoy it at this point because I've got a parent on board that can accept their limitations and advocate for myself. Um, my mom does this thing to this fucking day. Sorry, didn't mean to swear again. Where she whacks me on the back when she hugs me, and my whole body just goes to like 5 alarm fire. And I started saying to her last winter, when you do that, it scares me and I dissociate. And she's like, oh, I didn't mean to do it. I just want to hug you, blah, blah, blah. Right. And then eventually she'll be like, okay. I'm like, okay. And I come back again and I'm willing to try again and whack, 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 and I'm just like, Mom, you did the thing again. She's like, well, I don't know. I'm doing it. My hands are blah. And I'm like, I know, which is why I'm going to tell you every time. And then this spring, she showed up and with my dad, and I hugged my dad, and I didn't hug my mom. And I just stood there. And she was like, can I have a hug? And I was like, can you not hit me on the back? And she said, I'm really gonna try. And she kept her hands down and I hugged her. Um, and I've been able to hug my mom ever since. She hasn't done it again. And it had to change through me setting a boundary and me saying no in a way that I was really afraid to. Um, yeah, this program changed my life, is actively changing my life. I'm so liminal right now in learning who I am for the first time at 40 years old, getting to know these brilliant parts and pieces who live inside me, um, feeling possibility and freedom from what I felt completely powerless over. I'm grateful to be here. Thank you for your time and listening. Um, Welcome if you're new. If it feels disorienting, if it feels like you can't get your hands around it, stay. I listened for probably 6 months before I even knew how to open my mouth in this room. I love talking. I don't know if you've noticed. Um, it's a program you can do at your own pace and your own time, with your own wisdom at the center and with the wisdom of a group of people who are doing really incredible work. I just can't say more beautiful things and more liberatory things about this specific program, and I'm so grateful for this opportunity to be of service. Thank you so much.